On Monday, February 20th, 2017, Martine was worried. The day before, one of her sisters, Brigitte, had not called her mother. She usually called her mother every Sunday. Martine tried to call her sister. Her sister did not answer her calls or text messages. The next day, Martine's children sent a text message to their cousins, Sebastian and Charlotte. These messages also went unanswered. Martine contacted the illuminated sign company Visitech Orlux, where her sister's husband, Pascal Trudec, worked. The company told her that they had not seen Pascal at work since February 17th. 2 days later, on February 23rd, Martine called the police station in Nantes. The woman explained that she was worried because one of her sisters, Brigitte Trudec, had not contacted her by phone for several days. Brigitte lived in the commune of Orvaux, located 10 kilometers from Nantes. The caller said that if her sister had gone on vacation with her family, she would have definitely reported it. Brigitte lived in her own house with her husband Pascal, 21-year-old son Sebastian, and 18-year-old daughter Charlotte. Sebastian and Charlotte were students. They also did not answer the phone. Commissioner Cécile Pichon was instructed to respond to the woman's call. Cécile and her colleagues went to the specified address. Having arrived at the house, the commissioners decided to inspect it. The garage doors were closed. The windows on the second floor were closed. It was impossible to see anything through the first-floor window. Cécile rang the doorbell several times. Realizing that there was really no one in the house, she called the fire department. The fire department helped the commissioners break down the front door. The things were in their places. In the kitchen, the investigators' attention was drawn to the refrigerator. It was full of food, and many of the products had expired. Yogurts, milk, a package of sushi from February 16th. It is strange that the owners of the house left perishable products without taking them with them on the trip. There were unwashed dishes in the sink. Also, shards of broken glass were visible in the sink. In the bathroom, the commissioners noticed untouched toothbrushes. The residents of the house could, of course, have taken new toothbrushes with them, but their intuition told the law enforcement officers that the owners left the house in a hurry. Most likely, Brigitte, Pascal, and their children did not plan a long trip in advance. The commissioners examined the garage. There were no cars in it. Bed sheets were drying in the garage. Later, the inspectors will understand that the bed linen was removed from the bed in the bedroom on the second floor. An uncovered mattress was left on the bed. Traces of blood were found on the mattress and on the floor in the bedroom. Probably, the residents left the house against their will. Later, this version was confirmed. Not far from the house, the commissioners found 2 cars belonging to the Trudec spouses, a BMW and an Audi. The inspection of the house continued. On the ground floor, in the hallway on the floor, and on the stairs leading to the second floor. Traces of blood in the form of small drops were also found. On the ground floor in Sebastian's room, a cell phone with traces of dirt and dried blood was found. Note that only Sebastian's phone was found in the house. The phones of other family members were not found. In the meantime, the investigation team made inquiries about the members of the missing family. The head of the family, 49-year-old Pascal Trudec, worked as an electrical engineer. His wife Brigitte worked in the state treasury in Nantes. Pascal and Brigitte were the same age. Their children, as already mentioned, were students. News of the ongoing investigation quickly leaked to the press. Residents of Nantes, seeing the news on TV, immediately remembered a very high-profile case of recent years. The Deleganes family case. It was connected with the disappearance of several members of one family. If you want to know in detail what happened to the Deleganes family, write in the comments to this video. Another similarity was that the houses of the Deleganes and Troadec families were located only 4 kilometers from each other. All regional and national press covered the missing persons case. Local reporters closely followed the investigation and immediately passed on fresh information to reporters in Paris. Journalists began their own investigation, feeling that they were dealing with a no less terrible story, as in the case of the Deleganes family. Looking through Sebastian's accounts on social networks, investigators noted the tense relationship between the young man and his father. Apparently, there were constant conflicts between them. Pascal did not like that his son spent a lot of time at the computer. Sebastian was a difficult guy. He had a fiery temper. This is confirmed by an incident that occurred in 2014. In high school, the teenager suffered from a profuse rash of acne on his face, and this often became a reason for ridicule at school. This angered the young man. One day, Sebastian wrote on social networks, "I am going to arrange the murder of Varvo." The message alerted the local authorities. The Troadec family house was raided, as a result of which a fake pistol was found under Sebastian's bed in his room. He bought the pistol while on holiday in Spain. A case was opened against Sebastian. The court sentenced him to community service. The social worker who was in contact with Sebastian then made a note in his report. The parents are unable to hear their son's suffering. It is important to make a remark here. Sebastian's friends, seeing in what light their friend was being portrayed, contacted the investigators with the remark that the media portrayed Sebastian as a psychopath. It is necessary to stop the dissemination of this information, as it does not correspond to reality. Among the versions of the disappearance of the Troadec family members, the version of kidnapping was considered. Sebastian's car was never found. Thus, the young man came under suspicion. According to the investigators, he could have kidnapped his parents and sister. The Peugeot 308, which belonged to Sebastian, was put on the wanted list. The first developments in the case appeared on March 1st. In the Côte-Mise forest in the commune of Deranon, 270 kilometers from Orvault, a runner found trousers with a bank card in the pocket in the name of Charlotte Troadec. Cynologists with dogs arrived at the scene. As a result of the search operation, 3 kilometers from the place where the trousers were found in the commune of La Porrette, they found a cut sheet and 2 books that belonged to Pascal Troadec. Moreover, the books were children's. Pascal read them in elementary school. The next day, Thursday, March 2nd, Sebastian's car was found in Saint-Nazaire, 60 kilometers from Orvault. The car had closed, but unlocked doors. Traces of blood were found in the Peugeot, on the back seat, and in the trunk. The police suspicions about the fugitive only grew stronger. Soon, several people reported seeing a man resembling Sebastian in the vicinity of Saint-Nazaire. It seemed that the kidnapper was about to be apprehended, but unexpectedly, the investigation team received information that cast doubt on Sebastian's involvement in the disappearance of the family. Experts established that traces of blood found on the floor of the house belonged, among others, to Sebastian. Of course, he could have been injured during the attack on other family members, but his blood was found in only one place. In addition, traces of blood were found on broken glass, found in the kitchen sink. DNA analysis showed that the blood did not belong to any member of the Troadec family. We have already mentioned that the case of the disappearance of the family was actively covered in the media. Martine, Brigitte's sister, upon hearing the news that her nephew was suspected of kidnapping, advised investigators to look at Pascal's sister, Lady Troadec, and her husband, Hubert Cousin. She doubted Sebastian's involvement in the family's disappearance. Martine said that their families had not gotten along in recent years. Representatives of the gendarmerie visited the home of Lady Troadec and her husband, Hubert Cousin. The couple only confirmed that they had not seen their missing relatives for several months. A DNA sample was taken from both spouses. The DNA sample taken from Hubert matched the sample taken from the broken glass. On the morning of Sunday, March 5th, 2017, at 6:45 a.m., Hubert Quezon and Lady Trudeck were arrested. The couple began to give statements. Hubert and Lady met in 2006 on a dating site. Lady was 37. Hubert was 35. According to his wife, Hubert's head problems began a long time ago. She knew about his illness from the moment they met, but in 2013, a serious exacerbation began. Hubert came home from work and banged his head against the wall. One day, when they were driving in the car, Lady asked Hubert if he had secured the recorder well. Hubert began banging his head against the dashboard. The woman had already gotten used to such attacks, which could not be said about their little son. The boy was scared when his father was having a fit. At the same time, Lydia claimed that her husband did not show aggression towards her. Despite his head problems, Hubert worked as a boiler equipment engineer at a very serious facility. He was an employee at the base of nuclear submarines. His profession involves working with increased background noise. Despite the good soundproofing of the workshop, the roar of the engines and the noise of the pipes created a significant noise load. On the advice of his wife, Hubert went to a medical organization and underwent 2 audiograms. The doctor came to the conclusion that his patient was sensitive to low-frequency sound waves and issued a certificate recommending that he suspend his work activity. Hubert was granted a long sick leave. Hubert and Lady lived in Plouguenot, a village bordering beaches and cliffs, north of Finistère. Long before they met, Hubert had built a small house here. The house was located 300 meters from his mother's house. This neighborhood was not dictated by filial love. The land was sold at a good discount, and Hubert decided not to miss the opportunity to invest in real estate. But soon, noisy neighbors settled near the house he built. Hubert could not stand it and moved into the house of Marie-Françoise's mother, but the noise at night reached her house as well. So Hubert and Lady decided to spend the night on weekends at Lady's mother, Renée Truadec. But here, too, Hubert could not enjoy the silence. The bed they slept on creaked constantly, and he blamed his brother-in-law, Pascal Truadec, for this. Allegedly, he was constantly breaking the bed. Pascal really did not like Hubert. He often told his sister that her husband was crazy, and everyone laughed at him. Lady did not think so and defended her husband. The only flaw that, in her opinion, Hubert had was a pathological craving for collecting and storing unnecessary things. He never threw away yogurt jars or paper tablecloths. If he filled the bathtub with water, he did not drain it after washing, but left it to water the flowers. Hubert wrote a detailed confession to the murder of the members of the Truadec family on 17 pages. Hubert made his first attempt to enter the house of the Truadec family on February 7, 2017. He got behind the wheel of his own car, drove 250 kilometers from his house in Pont-des-Bois to the house of Truadec-Varveau. The journey took 3 hours. Hubert assumed that the family would go to a party that evening and the house would be empty. But when he arrived, he saw a light in the windows. Soon, Brigitte opened the door and let the cat out into the street. The first attempt to enter the house failed. Hubert returned home. Realizing that the second attempt could also fail, he prepared more carefully for the so-called operation to enter the house. 9 days later, on February 16, 2017, Hubert got back into his car and headed to Shuren's house. He took his camera, notebook, pencil, and stethoscope with him. He prudently put on a hooded jacket, a cap, and gloves. Hubert hoped that Pascal, Brigitte, and their children would not be home this time. The student holidays had begun, and the family was supposed to go on holiday. Arriving at the Troadec house around 10 o'clock in the evening, Hubert was disappointed. The family was home, but this time he decided not to give up, climbed over the fence, took out his stethoscope, and put it to the front door. Hubert wanted to eavesdrop on the conversations inside the house to catch a possible discussion about gold, the name of the city where Pascal Brigitte had a second home, the existence of which they had not told anyone. He moves the stethoscope along the garage door for a long time. With the help of a stethoscope, having excellent hearing, Hubert eavesdropped on conversations in the house. Exactly at 11 p.m., Brigitte opens the laundry room door and calls the cat into the house. Hubert sees a cat named Willis under a tree in the garden. The cat sits motionless and looks at him. Hubert also does not move. Brigitte closes the door. Charlotte goes to bed first. She lowers the shutters on the window of her room. The light goes out in the kitchen, then in the other rooms of the house. At this moment, Hubert decides to push the garage door. He managed to get into the garage. Hiding in the garage, he makes out some noise. One of the family members does not go to bed. Sebastian is sitting at the computer. Hubert hopes that when everyone falls asleep, he will be able to sneak into the house unnoticed, find the keys to the front door, and make casts of them. After that, he intended to leave the house unnoticed. With a duplicate of the keys, he will be able to come here at a convenient time. Finally, at 3:45 a.m., 24 Rue Auteuil in the commune of Orvaux fell asleep. Hubert carefully pushed the door leading from the garage into the house. He tiptoed across the tiled floor. Then he heard a rustling sound, turned around, and heard Brigitte's frightened voice. She was standing at the top of the stairs. He tried to go back into the garage, but he heard Pascal's voice behind him. Pascal shouted that he would kill him. Then Hubert felt a strong blow to his back. The warm jacket softened the force of the blow. Instinctively, Hubert turned around, snatched the crowbar from Pascal's hands, and struck him back on the head. Pascal, with a bloody head, rushed to the switch and turned on the light. At that moment, the door of one of the bedrooms facing the corridor opened. Sebastian ran out of the bedroom. He tried to pounce on Hubert, but the uninvited guest was quicker. He grabbed the crowbar with both hands and stabbed the young man right in the face, breaking his skull. Sebastian fell. Hubert pulled the crowbar out. Blood gushed out like a river. Charlotte ran out into the hallway to the screams. Hubert dealt the girl a fatal blow. She fell backwards in the doorway of her room. Brigitte did not see this. She managed to run to her room and lock the door from the inside. Hubert tried to break through the door with the crowbar. The crowbar got stuck in the door, and Brigitte managed to get it out from her side. The woman desperately resisted. Hubert knocked the door down with his shoulder. Brigitte retreated, holding the crowbar in her hand. Then Hubert snatched the crowbar from her hands and stabbed her in the head. At that moment, Pascal appeared from behind. He tore Hubert's hat off and began shouting something at him, but Hubert did not listen to anything. He dealt Pascal a fatal blow to the stomach. The tenants of the house were finished. Hubert would later claim at his trial that the victims had not seen his face. He had wrapped a scarf around his face when he climbed into the house. Hubert insisted that he was in a state of insane rage. Around 6 o'clock in the morning, he began to come to his senses. Realizing that he had done something irreparable, he went to the electrical panel. In a daze, he turned the light on and off. Then he went to the bathroom, washed his hands, and began to think about his next steps. Having come up with nothing, he went home to Pont de Bouilly. Around 10 o'clock in the morning, he stood on the threshold of the house. All his clothes were covered in blood. Lady asked if he had managed to get any information. Hubert only replied that he had done something stupid. This was not what he wanted to do. His wife took his things from him and took them to the wash. That same day, the couple decided to get rid of the bodies. Hubert instructed Lady to buy black plastic bags for transporting corpses. Around 8 o'clock in the evening, they put their child to bed and drove to the Troadec house. Having covered 250 kilometers, they entered the house. The lady helped her husband put the bodies of the murdered men in bags. Then they loaded the bodies into the trunk of Sebastian's Peugeot 308. They brought the bodies home. The lady decided that Hubert should bury the bodies on the estate. In her opinion, they would be safely hidden. But Hubert did otherwise. Before giving the bodies to the earth, he dismembered them. The fiend described the process of dismemberment in great detail, meticulously describing how he cut the skin, cut out the muscles, sawed off the limbs and heads. He buried the dismembered parts of the bodies, leaving the heads unburied. Later, speaking at the trial, psychiatrist Daniel Zaguri, who examined Hubert, said, "I believed that dismemberment was only compatible with certain types of personalities, but the case with Hubert is something special. He was absolutely sane. His actions cannot be called perversion. This is some kind of delusional dynamics." The day after the murder, on February 18th, after putting the child to bed, Hubert and Lady went to the ditch again. Lady did not like leaving her son alone at home, but she tried to calm herself down, repeating that in fact the child was not alone. Their dog Heidi was looking after the baby. After a long journey, Hubert went into the house. Lady was waiting for Hubert in the car, parked on the next street. They communicated by radio. The killer did a general cleaning of the house, washed the floors and walls, washed the sheets. Then the couple returned home. 2 days later, the murderer decided to burn the belongings of the murdered. He lit a fire on the territory of his estate and threw the things into the fire. He also decided to burn the heads of his victims. He threw the charred skulls into the waters of the Bay of Biscay on La Palude Beach. Having waited for the tide to take the skulls, he went home. He threw the murder weapon, a 108-centimeter crowbar, into the Ilorne River. Hubert added that in recent days he had been overcome by suicidal thoughts. He wanted to hang himself. The only thing that stopped him was that he had a son who needed him. Next, we would like to draw your attention to the description of Hubert's dialogue with his little son. The child saw that his dad had thrown a noose around his neck and screamed. Hubert tried to explain that if he were to bear the surname Cousin, he would become an outcast. Everyone would turn away from him because everything they say on TV about Aunt Brigitte is true. It was he who killed Uncle Pascal, Aunt Brigitte, Sebastian, and Charlotte. Now their bodies are scattered in pieces around the area. His dad, a monster, and his mother helped him a little. Seeing and hearing such horrific things, the little boy became hysterical, but the father continued. He was getting an answer from the shocked child. "Do you prefer a dead dad, or a dad in prison for life?" Hubert was indifferent to the feelings of others. Even his own child was no exception. After listening to the heartbreaking story of the couple, the investigators arrested both. Hubert was charged with a series of murders. Lady, charged with wording, changing the picture of the crime scene, and assisting in hiding the bodies. Hubert was born in the winter of 1970 in Brest. Being the last of 4 siblings, he always felt like an outsider. The family lived in a small house. Hubert recalled that he often watched his mother drinking in the room on the first floor. The woman suffered from alcohol addiction. The TV was on in the room, the noise of which constantly irritated little Hubert. What was the motive for this terrible crime? The investigators managed to establish that Hubert experienced a strong feeling of envy. He considered the Troudec family to be quite well off. Brigitte and Pascal owned expensive cars. They even bought a Peugeot 308 for their son. Hubert doubted that Pascal could provide the family with such prosperity on the salary of an electrician in an ordinary advertising construction company. He was convinced that his wife's brother was keeping the true source of his income a secret. According to Hubert, such a source was the treasures he had found. In Nantes and its environs, there was a legend about countless treasures hidden near the city during World War II. The city government tried to protect the gold from the Nazi invaders. There had been many people who wanted to find the treasures over the decades. The belief in their existence was always fueled by Pascal's father, named Eldy. He often told his versions where the riches might be hidden. A historical note is important here. On March 8, 1940, a weekly financial magazine in France came out with the headline, "The Treasury and the Bank of France." France was one of the world's largest gold bullion and coin hoarders at the time. The central bank's vaults held 2,500 tons of gold. But the article failed to mention that the outflow of gold began in March 1940. 6 months earlier, France, along with the United Kingdom, had declared war on Germany. To prevent the enemy from seizing the treasury if it crossed the border, Pierre-Eugène Fournier, governor of the Bank of France, took the initiative. He ordered the gold to be taken out of the country. On board warships, boxes of gold bullion and coins were shipped from ports to England, the West Indies, African countries, the United States, and Canada. 2,071 boxes filled with gold bars and coins were loaded into the cargo compartments of the battleship Dunkirk. Then, according to legend, during loading in the Brest harbor, 1 box of gold fell into the water. When the boxes were counted, it was found that 395 kilograms of gold were missing. The waters near Brest were examined by divers, but to no avail. There was also a version that the box of gold was stolen and hidden. Thus, Hubert decided that Brigitte and her husband had certainly found at least part of the treasure. Otherwise, where would they have money for cars and a second house, which they had bought quite recently? Let us clarify. Hubert believed that the Troudec spouses bought a large estate and hid their expensive purchases from everyone so as not to arouse suspicion. He was convinced that it was in the estate that Pascal hid the treasures he had found. In fact, there was no estate. It was the fruit of Hubert's wild imagination. However, he also made his wife believe in the existence of the estate. The man convinced Lady to try to talk to her brother's wife and find out information about the estate and where it was located. Moreover, he persuaded his wife to hide a microphone in her bra and record the conversation on a dictaphone. Lady obeyed her husband. Audio files with a recording of a conversation between Pascal, Brigitte, Lydie, Hubert, and René Troudec were found on Hubert's personal computer. The conversation was recorded in the house of René Troudec, the mother of Pascal and Lydie. Reina told her son that she was laying claim to half of what was taken. A quarter should go to her daughter Lydie, and another quarter to her son Pascal. Here Lydie asks her mother, "Half of what?" After this phrase, an incomprehensible growling and rustling sound is first heard on the audio recording. The microphone most likely hit the clothes. Then there is an indistinct verbal altercation. Then Pascal's distinct voice is heard. "What are you talking about, mother?" "What the hell did they slip you?" Hubert intervenes, telling Pascal, "It's simple. There was something in the building. Something very, very important." "But you're sick!" Pascal screams at the top of his lungs. The lady seems to cut him off. "If you have nothing to hide, then why are you so nervous?" The chair creaked on the tiled floor. Pascal slammed his fist on the table. He ordered Hubert to shut up in a commanding tone, then grabbed the table and shook it. Lady Trudeck screamed, "I'm calling the gendarmes!" "Go away! I'm calling the gendarmes," Brigitte intervened. "You fell 300 kilometers on my head." "What kind of story is this? We didn't steal anything. I'm never coming here again." Then Pascal's voice. "But why do you call us headlights?" Hubert objects. "I think you took something from the building." Stunned, Pascal continued, not letting Hubert finish. "Hubert, are you sick or something? What makes you think I found gold?" "I have information," Hubert continued. "Calm down, everyone," Pascal shouted loudly. Judging by the recording, it was clear how tense the relations between the relatives were. Now let's talk about the real state of affairs, not about legends. Investigators checked the bank accounts belonging to the Trudeck family, as well as tax returns. By the age of 50, Pascal, Brigitte, and Trudeck had finished paying the mortgage on their house in Orvaux. It was their only home. They were able to buy themselves an Audi A4 for Pascal and a BMW 318D for Brigitte. Both cars were used. They loved to travel, taking their children with them on trips to European cities. From their trips, they sent postcards to Lydia Hubert. This irritated Hubert. He perceived such messages as bragging. Let us add that at the time of the tragic events, about 60,000 euros were hidden in all of Simitri Adek's bank accounts. Please write in the comments if anyone knows how large this sum is by French standards. Let us pay attention to one more thing. Hubert and Lady were carriers of such a phenomenon as the delirium of two. In psychiatry, this phenomenon is called induced delusional disorder, in which delirium is shared by two or more people with close emotional ties. The husband was delirious with gold and convinced his wife of its existence, but in this case, the phenomenon can safely be called the delirium of three. René Trudeck believed in the existence of gold. Pascali and Lady's mother admitted that they had misinterpreted the words of the deceased husband. Previously, she claimed that her late husband had once told her that he had found a box that seemed to contain gold. He had found the box in an old apartment building in Brest when he was working as a plasterer. The key word in his phrase was seems. Later, René Trudeck told a different version of how her husband had found the gold. On March 10th, the regional newspaper Le Telegram published René's completely different testimony. Now the woman claimed that it was not her husband who had found the gold, but her father. She told journalists as much. "It was my father and 3 friends who raised the ingots from the bottom of the Brest port that had fallen into the water during the loading of the treasures of the Bank of France in June 1940. Most likely, Pascal and Lady's mother and father were good inventors. They could not even imagine that a small lie could develop into a big tragedy." We would like to note one more fact. In August 2015, Pascal wrote 2 text messages. One was addressed to Lady's sister, another mother, Renee. He reminded his sister that he was her only brother and wanted only the best for her. He offered to take Hubert to a therapist. Hubert was obviously ill. He needed help. He wanted to continue the conversation and was very sorry that his sister had distanced herself from him. In a text message to his mother, he wrote the following: "You trust Hubert more than your own son. I am very, very disappointed." Rena sent him the following text message: "If you come, I will call the gendarmes." We figured out the motive. Envy, Hubert's obsessive, manic idea of getting mythical gold, turned into a tragedy for both families. The lives of some were already lost. The lives of others were destroyed. For the investigators, one fact remained unclear. Remember Hubert's description of that night. He single-handedly dealt with 4 adults, and not one of them fought back. Moreover, he killed everyone on the first floor and on the stairs leading to the second floor. How then to explain the traces of blood on the mattress on the second floor? And why, in that case, was it necessary to wash the sheets taken from the bed in the bedroom located on the second floor, if he did not wrap the bodies in the sheet? According to his testimony, he and his wife put the bodies in bags. Investigators believed that Hubert killed all 4 deliberately, with direct intent. Most likely the residents of the house were sleeping at the time when Hubert attacked them. At least, Pascal and Brigitte were most likely in their bed. Hence the traces of blood on the mattress and the washed sheet. Hubert Cauesson was examined by psychiatrists from the moment of imprisonment. In the provided report, the experts came to the conclusion that Hubert has a thought disorder. In the process of thought, his common sense is impaired. Hubert said that in the first months of imprisonment, the same image appeared in his memory. He saw 18-year-old Charlotte, whom he killed that night. On Friday morning of March 10, 2017, in Pont-de-Buis, near Finistère, the remains of 4 people were found on the farm of Lady Truadec and Hubert Huissin. On March 21, 2017, DNA testing established that the remains belonged to Pascal, Brigitte, Sébastien, and Charlotte Truadec. The trial of Hubert Cauesson and Lady Truadec began on Tuesday, June 22, 2021. The prosecution had asked for the maximum sentence of life imprisonment for Cauesson and 3 years in prison for Lady Truadec. On July 7, 2021, Hubert Cauesson was found guilty of the murders of Pascal, Brigitte, Sébastien, and Charlotte Truadec. He was sentenced to 30 years in prison. Uberko escaped from a life sentence because the court found him to have a mental disorder. Since he was not given a special punishment in the form of a strict regime, he is eligible to apply for parole after 15 years. Lady Truadec was found guilty of concealing corpses and altering the crime scene. She was sentenced to 3 years in prison. Moreover, after 2 years in prison, she can apply for parole. Uberko and Lady did not challenge the court's decision.